Captain Jake Murphy checked the navigation screen one more time before announcing their arrival to the crew. The purple planet Valoria filled the viewport, and it looked like something from a dream with swirling clouds of violet and silver. He had been a trader for 15 years traveling between human colonies and alien worlds. But this mission felt different somehow. The Elven Council had personally requested his presence to discuss opening trade routes with Earth. Jake ran a hand through his dark hair and tried to calm the nervous energy in his chest. His co-pilot Lisa Chen glanced over at him with a knowing smile and told him to relax. She reminded him that they had dealt with dozens of alien species before, and the elves were known for being peaceful and welcoming. Jake nodded, but something in his gut told him this trip would change everything. The Starlight Voyager descended through the atmosphere, and Jake watched the landscape transform below them. Massive forests of silver trees stretched as far as he could see, broken only by crystal-clear rivers and floating mountains that defied gravity. Cities made of white stone and living wood dotted the valleys, and he could see small flying creatures circling the towers. Lisa pointed out the landing platform ahead, and Jake guided the ship down with steady hands. The landing gear touched the white stone surface with barely a whisper, and the engines powered down. Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. Before heading to the cargo bay where his small diplomatic team waited, there were only 5 humans in total: himself, Lisa, and 3 others who specialized in trade negotiations. They had brought samples of Earth goods and technology as gifts for the Elven Council. The cargo ramp lowered, and warm air rushed into the ship carrying the scent of flowers and something sweet Jake could not identify. He stepped out onto the platform and immediately noticed the welcoming committee. A dozen elves stood in a semicircle, all tall and graceful with silver hair that seemed to glow in the sunlight. They wore flowing robes in shades of green and blue, and their eyes held an ancient wisdom that made Jake feel very young. But what caught his attention most were the dragons. Each elf had at least one dragon companion, and they came in all colors and sizes. Some were as small as cats, while others were large enough to ride. They had scales that shimmered like gems and eyes that looked far too intelligent for simple animals. One elf stepped forward from the group, and Jake found himself staring. She was younger than the others, with long silver hair that fell to her waist and eyes the color of spring leaves. 2 dragons accompanied her, one with emerald scales and another that gleamed like polished gold. The green dragon sat on her shoulder, while the golden one walked beside her like a loyal dog. She introduced herself as Luna and welcomed them to Valoria in perfect English. Her voice was soft and musical, and Jake felt his nervousness melt away. Luna explained that she would be their guide during their stay and would help them understand elven customs and culture. She gestured to her dragons and introduced them as Moss and Spark. Moss, the green dragon, chirped and tilted his head at the humans with obvious curiosity. Spark, the golden dragon, circled around Jake, sniffing at him before sitting down and staring up at him. Luna laughed and said that Spark rarely showed interest in strangers so quickly. Jake reached out slowly, and Spark nudged his hand with her warm snout. The scales felt smooth like polished stone, and Spark made a pleased rumbling sound deep in her chest. Luna looked surprised and told Jake that dragons were excellent judges of character. If Spark trusted him, then he must have a good heart. The other elves nodded in agreement, and the tension Jake had been carrying disappeared completely. Luna led them through the gardens that surrounded the landing. Platform plants from across the galaxy grew in perfect harmony, creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Jake saw flowers that glowed softly in the shade and vines that moved on their own to create archways. Small dragons played among the branches, chasing each other and calling out in high-pitched voices. Luna explained that elves had spent thousands of years learning to cultivate life in all its forms. They believed that every living thing had value and deserved respect. The dragons were their partners, not their pets, and the bond between elf and dragon was sacred. Jake found himself fascinated by everything he saw and heard. He asked Luna countless questions about the plants, the dragons, and elven society. She answered each question with patience and obvious pleasure at his interest. Lisa walked beside them and occasionally asked her own questions about trade and resources. The other elves in their group spoke quietly among themselves, but Jake noticed they kept glancing at him and Luna. As they approached the city proper, Jake saw elven families going about their daily lives. Children played in the streets with young dragons tumbling after them. Adults worked in gardens or sat in outdoor cafes sipping drinks and talking. Everyone seemed peaceful and content in a way Jake rarely saw in human cities. Luna brought them to a beautiful building made of white stone and living trees that grew right through the walls. She explained that this would be their residence during their stay. Each room had a view of the gardens and came equipped with everything they might need. Jake was given a room on the 3rd floor with a balcony that overlooked a small pond. He set down his bags and stepped outside to breathe in the fresh air. Spark had followed him up the stairs and now stood on the balcony railing, looking out at the water. Luna appeared in the doorway and asked if everything was to his liking. Jake assured her it was perfect and thanked her for her hospitality. She smiled and told him that dinner would be served in 2 hours. She suggested he rest and refresh himself after the journey, but before she left she paused and looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. She said that she had a strange feeling about him, as if they were meant to meet. Jake felt the same pull but did not know how to put it into words. Luna seemed to understand and simply nodded before leaving him alone with Spark. Jake sat on the balcony and watched the sun set over Valoria. The sky turned shades of pink and orange, and the stars began to appear one by one. Spark curled up at his feet and made soft, contented sounds. For the first time in years, Jake felt like he had found a place where he truly belonged. He did not know what the coming days would bring, but something told him his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The warm evening air carried the sound of distant music and laughter. Dragons flew overhead, silhouetted against the colorful sky. Jake closed his eyes and let himself simply exist in this moment of perfect peace. Tomorrow he would begin his work with the Elven Council. But tonight he allowed himself to dream of possibilities he had never dared to consider. Before Spark shifted against his leg and he reached down to stroke her golden scales. The dragon looked up at him with knowing eyes, as if she could see straight into his soul. Jake smiled and whispered that he was glad to have met her. Spark chirped softly in response, and Jake had the strangest feeling that she understood every word. Jake woke to sunlight streaming through the open balcony doors and the sound of dragons calling to each other in the distance. Spark was still curled up at the foot of his bed, and she lifted her head when he stirred. He smiled at the golden dragon and reached out to scratch behind her ears the way he had seen Luna do with her dragons. Spark made a pleased rumbling sound and stretched like a cat before hopping off the bed. Jake dressed in clean clothes and made his way downstairs, where he found his team already gathered for breakfast. The dining hall was filled with long wooden tables and the walls were covered in flowering vines. Elves and humans sat together, sharing a meal of fresh fruit bread and something that tasted like honey, but had a slight sparkle to it. Luna appeared at his side and gestured for him to sit with her. She had brought both her dragons and they settled at her feet looking completely relaxed. Jake noticed that Spark immediately moved to sit beside him instead, and Luna raised an eyebrow with amusement. She said that Spark had clearly chosen him as a favorite, and that was a rare honor. Dragons were very particular about who they bonded with, and usually only showed such affection to their elven partners. Jake felt warmth spread through his chest at the thought. After breakfast, Luna took Jake on a tour of the city while the rest of his team met with trade officials. They walked through markets where vendors sold everything from glowing crystals to woven cloth that changed colors in the light. Children ran past them laughing and playing with young dragons that tumbled after them. Jake noticed that everyone seemed genuinely happy here. There was no rushing, no stress, just people living in harmony with each other and nature. Luna brought him to the great library, a massive structure carved into the trunk of an ancient tree. Inside, the walls were lined with books and scrolls from floor to ceiling. Elven scholars sat at tables, reading and taking notes while their dragon companions dozed nearby. Luna explained that knowledge was sacred to her people, and they had spent generations collecting wisdom from across the galaxy. She showed him texts written in languages he had never seen and told him stories of ancient times. Jake was fascinated and found himself asking questions about everything. Luna seemed delighted by his curiosity and answered each question with patience. As they left the library, moss flew down from Luna's shoulder and landed on Jake's arm. The green dragon looked at him with bright, intelligent eyes and chirped softly. Luna looked surprised and explained that Moss was usually shy around strangers. For both her dragons to accept Jake so quickly was almost unheard of. She asked if he had ever worked with animals before. Jake admitted that he had grown up on a farm on Earth and had always felt a connection with creatures. He told her about the dogs and horses he had cared for as a child. Luna listened with interest and said that perhaps that was why the dragons felt comfortable with him. They could sense his gentle nature and respect for living things. As they walked through a park filled with silver trees, Luna asked Jake about his life on Earth. She wanted to know what had brought him to space and why he had chosen to be a trader. Jake told her about his desire to see the universe and meet new species. He explained that Earth could sometimes feel small and limiting, and he had always dreamed of something more. Luna nodded thoughtfully and said she understood that feeling. Even though Valoria was beautiful, she had always wondered what lay beyond their world. That was why she had volunteered to be a guide for visitors. She wanted to learn about other cultures and ways of life. Jake found himself opening up to her in ways he rarely did with anyone. There was something about Luna that made him feel safe and understood. They talked for hours, sharing stories about their childhoods, their dreams, and their fears. By the time the twin suns began to set, Jake realized he had not thought about work once all day. That evening, Luna invited Jake to attend a gathering in the Great Hall. She explained that the elves were hosting a feast to welcome the human visitors and celebrate the potential new friendship between their peoples. Jake agreed and returned to his quarters to change into more formal clothes. When he arrived at the Great Hall, he was amazed by what he saw. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to reach the stars. Long tables were laden with food and drink, and hundreds of elves filled the space. Dragons of every color perched on rafters or curled up beside their partners. Music, played from somewhere Jake could not see, beautiful and haunting. Luna found him in the crowd and led him to a seat of honor near the head table. She sat beside him and explained each dish as servants brought them out. There were roasted vegetables, glazed with sweet sauces, fish from the crystal rivers, and bread that melted in his mouth. Jake tried everything and found that he loved it all. Throughout the meal, elves came to greet him and welcome him to their world. They asked about Earth and humans and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. Jake noticed that many of them kept glancing between him and Luna with knowing smiles. He wondered what they were thinking, but did not want to ask. After dinner, there was dancing, and Jake watched as elves moved gracefully across the floor with their dragons flying overhead. Luna stood and offered him her hand, asking if he would like to dance. Jake admitted that he was not very good at it, but she assured him it did not matter. She led him to the dance floor, and they moved together to the slow rhythm of the music. Jake was very aware of how close she was, and the way her green eyes seemed to sparkle in the soft light. Spark and Moss flew in circles above them, clearly enjoying themselves. Other couples made space for them, and Jake realized that everyone was watching. He felt self-conscious, but Luna squeezed his hand gently and told him to ignore them. She said they were just happy to see her enjoying herself. Jake wanted to ask what she meant by that, but the moment did not feel right. Instead, he simply enjoyed the dance and the feeling of being exactly where he belonged. When the music ended, Luna led him out to a balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool and filled with the scent of night-blooming flowers. Below them, the city glowed with soft lights, and he could see dragons flying between the buildings. Luna stood beside him in comfortable silence for a moment before speaking. She told him that she had never felt this comfortable with an outsider before. Usually it took weeks or even months for her to open up to strangers, but with Jake, everything felt natural and easy. Jake admitted that he felt the same way. He said that being on Valoria felt like coming home, even though he had only been here one day. Luna looked at him with an expression that made his heart beat faster. She seemed about to say something important when a young elf approached them and apologized for interrupting. The elf explained that the council wanted to speak with Jake in the morning about the trade agreements. Luna nodded and thanked the messenger before turning back to Jake. She suggested they both get some rest before the big meeting tomorrow. Jake agreed, though he did not want the evening to end. As they walked back through the halls, Luna's hand brushed against his and neither of them pulled away. The meeting with the Elven Council went better than Jake could have hoped. The council members were impressed with the samples his team had brought and eager to establish regular trade routes with Earth. They asked intelligent questions about human, technology, and culture, and seemed genuinely interested in building a lasting friendship between their worlds. Luna sat beside Jake throughout the meeting, and occasionally helped explain things when the translation got tricky. By midday, they had reached a preliminary agreement that would benefit both species. The council suggested that Jake and his team stay on Valoria for another few weeks to work out the specific details. Jake agreed without hesitation and tried not to think about how happy that made him. After the meeting, Luna suggested they take a walk to celebrate the successful negotiations. She led him away from the city toward a forest of silver trees that grew along a crystal-clear river. Spark and Moss flew ahead of them, diving and playing in the air. Jake watched them with a smile and commented on how happy they always seemed. Luna explained that dragons lived in the moment and found joy in simple things. She said humans could learn a lot from them. As they walked deeper into the forest, Luna told Jake about her life. She explained that she had been training to be a diplomat since she was young. She had always been curious about other worlds and loved learning new languages, but she admitted that sometimes she felt lonely because most elves her age were focused on starting families while she was focused on her work. Jake understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. He told her that he had spent so much time traveling that he had never really had time for relationships. Part of him wondered if he had been running from something rather than running toward something. Luna stopped walking and looked at him with those piercing green eyes. She said that sometimes the things we run from are the things we need most. Jake felt like she could see right through him to all the doubts and fears he kept hidden. They continued walking in thoughtful silence until they reached a clearing beside the river. The water was so clear, Jake could see smooth stones on the bottom. Luna sat on the grass and gestured for him to join her. The dragons settled nearby and closed their eyes to nap in the warm sunlight. Luna asked Jake what he wanted from life beyond trading and traveling. It was such a simple question, but it hit him hard. He had never really stopped to think about it. After a long pause, he admitted that he wanted to feel like he mattered to someone. He wanted to have a place where he belonged, and people who cared whether he came home. Luna reached over and took his hand. She told him that he already mattered more than he knew. She confessed that she had been drawn to him from the moment they met, and that her dragons had sensed something special about him. Jake squeezed her hand and said he felt the same connection. Before either of them could say more, Moss suddenly sat up and chirped in alarm. Both dragons were staring into the forest with their ears perked forward. Luna stood quickly, and Jake followed her lead. A moment later, a group of elven children burst into the clearing, laughing and chasing each other. They were playing some kind of game with their young dragons and did not seem to notice the adults. At first, Luna relaxed and smiled at the sight. She told Jake that children often came here to play because the river was safe and shallow. The children finally noticed them, and several of them waved shyly. Luna waved back and called out a greeting in the elven language. Most of the children went back to their games, but one little girl stood frozen, staring at Jake with wide blue eyes. Her small dragon companion landed on her shoulder and chirped curiously. The girl could not have been more than 5 or 6 years old, with silver hair pulled into 2 braids. She wore a simple dress and had flowers tucked behind her ears. For a long moment she just stared at Jake as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Then without warning she started running toward him. Her little dragon flew beside her, trying to keep up. Luna looked confused and stepped forward, but the girl ran right past her. She threw herself at Jake's legs and wrapped her small arms around him. Then she looked back at the other children with pure joy on her face and shouted something in the elven language. Luna gasped and put a hand over her mouth. The other children stopped playing and stared in shock. Jake looked down at the little girl, who was now looking up at him with tears streaming down her cheeks. He did not understand what was happening, but something about her desperate hug made his heart ache. Luna knelt beside them and gently spoke to the child. The girl responded in rapid Elven and pointed at Jake several times. Luna's expression shifted from confusion to wonder to something Jake could not identify. Finally, Luna looked up at him and translated. She said the girl had shouted, "Look, my dad is here." Jake felt like all the air had been sucked from his lungs. He stared at Luna in shock and then down at the little girl who was still clinging to him. The child's dragon had landed on Jake's shoulder and was nuzzling his cheek. Luna quickly explained that the girl's name was Lily, and she had been raised by Luna herself after Lily's parents died in an accident 2 years ago. Lily was like a daughter to her. But now Lily was insisting that she had seen Jake in her dreams for many nights. In her dreams he was kind and loving and protected her from bad things. She said he felt like family, like the father she had never known. The other elven adults had arrived by now, drawn by the commotion. They whispered among themselves and looked at Jake with a mixture of curiosity and concern. One elderly elf stepped forward and examined Lily carefully. He asked her questions in the elven language and she answered eagerly, still refusing to let go of Jake. Finally, the elder turned to Luna and spoke. Luna listened carefully and then explained to Jake what was happening. She said that elven children sometimes had prophetic dreams about important people who would enter their lives. It was rare but not unheard of. The dreams were usually accurate and the bonds they predicted were real and strong. The elder believed that Lily had formed a soul connection with Jake even before meeting him. Such connections transcended species and were considered sacred by the elven people. Jake did not know what to say. He looked down at Lily, who was now smiling up at him with complete trust and love in her eyes. Her small hand reached up and touched his face as if to make sure he was real. Something in his chest cracked open, and he felt tears sting his own eyes. Without thinking, he knelt down and hugged the little girl properly. She buried her face in his shoulder and made happy sounds. Her dragon chirped and nuzzled both of them. Luna watched with tears rolling down her own cheeks. The other elves had fallen silent, and Jake realized they were witnessing something significant. When Lily finally pulled back, she was beaming. She said something to Luna, who smiled through her tears. Luna told Jake that Lily wanted to know if he would stay with her forever. Jake felt his heart break and soar at the same time. He looked at Luna and saw hope and fear warring in her expression. He realized that whatever he said next would change everything. He looked back at Lily and this little girl who had somehow chosen him across dreams and distance. He thought about the emptiness he had been carrying for years and the longing for connection and family. Then he smiled at Lily and told her he would stay. The next few days passed in a blur of emotion and adjustment. Lily refused to leave Jake's side and followed him everywhere like a devoted shadow. Her little dragon, who she called Pepper, stayed perched on Jake's shoulder most of the time. Luna watched. All of this with a mixture of joy and sadness that she tried to hide. Jake could see the conflict in her eyes every time she looked at him and Lily together. One evening, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Luna asked Jake to walk with her in the gardens. They left the sleeping child with a trusted friend and headed out under the stars. The night air was cool and filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Luna was quiet for a long time before she finally spoke. She told Jake that seeing him with Lily had awakened feelings she did not know how to handle. She had raised Lily alone for 2 years and had become everything to the child: mother, teacher, protector. Now Lily had bonded with Jake so strongly, and Luna felt like she was losing. Her daughter Jake stopped walking and turned to face her. He took both her hands and told her that he would never try to take Lily away from her. He explained that he understood Lily needed both of them, and that Luna would always be her mother, in every way that mattered. He said he wanted to be part of their family, not replace anyone. Luna looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. She admitted that she was afraid of something else too. She said she had feelings for Jake that went beyond friendship, and she did not know if that was real or if it was just because of Lily. Jake pulled her into his arms and held her close. He told her that he had felt drawn to her from the moment they met, long before Lily had appeared. Said that his feelings for her were real and deep and had nothing to do with obligation. Luna clung to him, and they stood together under the stars for a long time. Finally, she pulled back and looked up at him with those green eyes that seemed to see everything. She asked him what they were going to do. Jake admitted he did not have all the answers. He said he needed to talk to his team and the council about extending his stay indefinitely. He wanted to be with Luna and Lily, but he had responsibilities. Back on Earth, Luna nodded and said she understood. She told him that whatever he decided, she would support him, but she made him promise to be honest with her and with Lily about what he could really offer them. Jake promised, and they walked back, hand in hand. Over the following weeks, Jake worked with his team to create a plan. Lisa and the others agreed to handle the trade negotiations with regular visits to Valoria, while Jake stayed behind as Earth's first permanent ambassador to the Elven world. The council was thrilled with this arrangement and offered Jake a home and full citizenship. Jake sent messages back to Earth explaining his decision. His family was surprised but supportive when he told them he had found something worth staying for. Meanwhile, his relationship with both Lily and Luna deepened. Lily started calling him Papa within the first week, and his heart melted every time she showed him all her favorite places: the tree where she liked to climb, the pond where friendly fish would eat from her hand, the meadow where wild dragons nested. Pepper followed them everywhere and had fully adopted Jake as her second person. Spark and Moss seemed pleased with this development, and the three dragons became inseparable. Luna taught Jake the Elven language, and he proved to be a quick student. She showed him how to care for dragons and how to read the signs of nature. They spent long evenings talking about everything and nothing. The attraction between them grew stronger, but they moved slowly, both aware that Lily was watching and learning from them. Jake wanted to do this right. One day, Luna took Jake to meet her parents, who lived in a village in the mountains. They were elderly elves with kind faces and warm smiles. At first, they were uncertain about their daughter falling for a human, but after spending time with Jake, they gave their blessing. Luna's mother took Jake aside and told him that she had never seen her daughter so happy. She made him promise to always cherish Luna and Lily. Jake promised with all his heart. When they returned home, Lily had made something special. She presented Jake with a small carving of a dragon that she had made herself with help from her teacher. She told him it was so he would always remember that he belonged with them. Jake had to fight back tears as he thanked her. He hung the carving in his room where he could see it every day. As the weeks turned into months, Jake settled into his new life. He helped Luna with Lily's education and tucked the little girl into bed every night. He attended council meetings and helped forge stronger bonds between humans and elves. He explored Valoria with Luna by his side, falling more in love with both the world and the woman. One evening, they were walking along the river at sunset with all three dragons flying overhead. Lily was at a friend's house for a sleepover, giving them rare time alone. Luna had been quieter than usual all day, and Jake finally asked what was on her mind. She stopped and turned to face him with a serious expression. She told him that she needed to know if he was truly happy here, or if he missed his old life. Jake took her hands and looked into her eyes. He told her that he had spent years searching for something he could not name. He had traveled across the galaxy looking for purpose and meaning, but here on Valoria, with her and Lily, he had found everything he had ever wanted. He said that every morning. He woke up grateful, and every night he went to sleep. Content, Luna smiled through tears and told him she felt the same way. Then she said something that made Jake's heart stop. She asked if he would consider becoming bonded to her in the Elven way. She explained that bonding was like marriage, but deeper, a commitment of souls that lasted beyond death. Jake did not hesitate. He said yes immediately. Luna laughed and cried and threw her arms around him. The dragons swooped down and circled them, chirping joyfully as if they understood. That night they told Lily about their plans. The little girl jumped up and down with excitement. She said she had known from her dreams that they would become a real family. She asked if that meant Jake would be her papa forever. Jake knelt down and told her that he would be her papa forever no matter what. He promised to love her and protect her and be there for her always. Lily hugged him tight and whispered that she loved him. Jake felt tears roll down his cheeks as he whispered back that he loved her too. Luna watched them with pure happiness on her face. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Jake and Luna sat on the balcony under the stars. They talked about their future together, about The life they would build. Luna told him about the bonding ceremony, and what it would mean. Jake listened and felt nothing but certainty. He had found his home, his family, his purpose. Everything he had been running toward his whole life had been waiting for him here. The bonding ceremony took place 2 months later on a clear evening when both moons were full. The entire city gathered to witness the union between Luna and Jake. It was the first time in recorded history that an elf had bonded with a human. The ceremony was held in the sacred grove where the oldest trees grew and ancient magic still lingered in the air. Flowers bloomed everywhere, filling the air with sweet fragrance. Dragons of every color perched in the branches, watching with solemn eyes. Jake stood at the center of the grove, wearing traditional elven robes that Luna had made for him. Beside him stood Luna, in a dress of silver and green that made her look like a goddess. Lily stood between them, holding both their hands, and, beaming with pride, Spark, Moss, and Pepper circled overhead, their scales catching the moonlight. The eldest member of the council stepped forward to perform the ceremony. He spoke in the ancient elven language, and Jake understood enough to follow. Along, the elder talked about the nature of bonding, about two souls choosing to walk the same path. He spoke of trust and sacrifice, and the deep magic that connected all living things. Then he asked Luna and Jake to speak their vows. Luna went first. She promised to stand beside Jake through all the days of their lives. She promised to honor his humanity, even as he learned elven ways. She promised to build a home filled with love and laughter. Her voice was steady and strong, and Jake felt his heart swell. Then it was his turn. He promised to love her with everything he had. He promised to be a good father to Lily and any children they might have. He promised to protect their family and honor the trust the elven people had placed in him. His voice shook with emotion, but he meant every word. The elder then asked them to place their hands together. As they did, a soft glow began to emanate from their joined hands. Luna had explained this would happen. The glow was the visible sign of their souls connecting. It grew brighter and brighter until everyone had to shield their eyes. Then it faded, leaving behind matching marks on their palms. These marks would remain forever, a symbol of their bond. The crowd erupted in cheers, and the Eater dragons roared their approval. Lily jumped up and down with excitement. Jake pulled Luna into his arms and kissed her as the celebration began. That night there was a feast that lasted until dawn. Jake danced with Luna and with Lily, and even tried dancing with some of the dragons. Everyone was joyful, and Jake felt like his heart might burst from happiness. When the celebration finally ended, Jake and Luna walked home with Lily asleep in Jake's arms. Pepper dozed on his shoulder while Spark and Moss flew lazily overhead. They reached their home, a beautiful house that the community had built for them as a bonding gift. It was made of living wood and stone, with rooms for all of them, and a large garden. Jake carried Lily to her room and tucked her into bed. He kissed her forehead and whispered that he loved her. Then he and Luna finally had a moment alone. They stood on their balcony looking out at the sleeping city. Luna leaned against him and sighed contentedly. She told him that she had never imagined she could be this happy. Jake wrapped his arms around her and said he felt the same. The following months brought new routines and new joys. Jake fully embraced his role as ambassador, working to strengthen the bonds between humans and elves. More humans came to visit Valoria, and some even chose to stay. The trade routes flourished, bringing prosperity to both worlds, but Jake's favorite role was being a father. He walked Lily to school every morning and helped her with her lessons every evening. He taught her about Earth and humans, while she taught him about dragons and elven magic. She was bright and curious and full of love. Jake marveled every day at how lucky he was to have her in his life. Luna continued her work as a diplomat, but now she and Jake worked together. They made a great team, balancing each other perfectly. At night, they would sit together and talk about their day. Sometimes they would plan for the future, dreaming of the life they were building. One evening, about a year after the bonding ceremony, Luna told Jake she had news: she was pregnant. Jake felt joy explode through him. He picked her up and spun her around while she laughed. When he set her down, Lily came running, asking what the excitement was about. They told her she was going to be a big sister. Lily squealed with delight and immediately started making plans. She wanted to teach the baby everything about dragons. She wanted to share her toys and her room. Jake and Luna looked at each other with tears of happiness in their eyes. The pregnancy was smooth and Luna glowed with health. Lily was involved in every step, talking to Luna's belly and singing to her future sibling. Jake spent hours preparing the nursery, painting stars on the ceiling and building furniture. The dragons seemed to sense the new life growing and became extra protective of Luna. When the baby finally arrived, it was a boy. He had Luna's silver hair and Jake's brown eyes. They named him River after the place where Jake had first met Lily. Lily was instantly smitten with her baby brother. She held him carefully and promised to always protect him. Jake watched his family and felt complete in a way he never had before. As River grew, it became clear he had inherited gifts from both his parents. He could communicate with dragons like elves, but had human curiosity and adaptability. Lily doted on him, teaching him everything she knew. Jake and Luna raised both children with love and patience. They taught them to respect all forms of life and to bridge the gap between human and elven cultures. Years passed and their family grew in love, if not in size. Lily grew into a remarkable young woman, studying to be a diplomat like her parents. River showed talent in both magic and science, blending the best of both worlds. Jake's hair turned gray at the temples, but his heart stayed young. Luna remained as beautiful and wise as the day they met. Their dragons grew old alongside them, faithful companions to the end. One evening, when both children were grown and starting their own adventures, Jake and Luna sat on their balcony. It was the same spot where they had stood so many years ago. Luna asked Jake if he had any regrets. Jake looked at her and smiled. He said that meeting her and Lily was the best thing that ever happened to him. He said that choosing to stay was the easiest decision he had ever made. He thanked her for giving him a family and a home. Luna took his hand and said she was the lucky one. She said that a little girl's dream had brought them all together. She said that Lily had been right all along. Jake was meant to be their father, their partner, their family. They sat together watching the stars come out. One by one, 3 dragons perched nearby, Spark and Moss Gray with age, and a younger dragon that belonged to River. Jake thought about the strange path his life had taken. He had traveled across the galaxy looking for something he could not name, and he had found it in the most unexpected way. A little alien girl had seen him and shouted that her dad was here, and somehow she had been absolutely right. Jake squeezed Luna's hand and smiled. He was home.